Hello there, and welcome to Saber Duel Gaming, where we always take the high ground. Because yes, on YouTube, everyone needs a pompous catchphrase. And welcome to our first ever retro review, where we look back at past games and see how they rank up now. And we're starting with WWE's 2K16. And yes, 2016 is hardly especially retro, but it came out in 2015, and I was already doing work on it, so just don't at me. Ah, professional wrestling, you delicious and ridiculous sport. Okay, that's a stretch. Professional wrestling is probably the only version of a computer game that's more real within the game than it is in real life. And yet, it's produced such a wide range of computer games, it's really hard to narrow it down. Many, like myself from the older days, prefer the Nintendo 64's range from WrestleMania 2000 to the all-time classic WWF No Mercy. But I think it's fair to say that in modern times, the most popular and successful franchise has been WWE's 2K series. The 2K series of wrestling games follows the same model as games such as FIFA, with yearly updates with minor roster and cosmetic changes, the odd tweak here or there, and maybe a new game mode. Because of this, year on year there was very little that actually seemed to change in the game, apart from maybe a favourite wrestler disappearing from the roster. However, surely if we look back, from 2022 to 2016's offering, we would notice a more substantial change. So how does it stack up? Well, let's start with the roster. From the beginning, you already have many past greats like Bret the Hitman Hart and Sting, along with all the current superstars of the time to play as, with others unlockable behind fun activities within the game, which we'll talk about later. But then of course, there's the DLC, because apparently you haven't spent enough yet. So what about the match types? Well, this is a pretty impressive range. One-on-one, tag team, triple threat, Royal Rumbles, Hell in a Cells and ladder matches, all your favourites are there. Granted, the Elimination Chamber match hadn't been added to the range yet, and previous ones such as the Buried Alive matches are also missing. However, I think it's fair to say that most of these were the ones that didn't particularly work well. And what else have we got? Well, the WWE Universe mode allows you to play through a full year of WWE drama and shenanigans. You get to customise everything within the experience, and it's actually affected by other modes within the game. The WWE Creation mode gave you more options than ever before when it came to making your own wrestlers, title belts and arenas, and while this has been added to in later games, I think it's fair to say there's very little that's been done to fully improve on the version we have right here. So far, WWE 2K16 stacks up pretty nicely against the more recent offerings. But eventually, we have to get down to the actual gameplay, the combat itself in the ring. How does it play? And I think it's fair to say that right from the get-go, I expected that this was always going to be where it was going to feel more dated. But it doesn't. If you've played any of the games in this franchise, you'll probably pick up the controls again pretty quickly. Within my first match, I was hitting every move I was aiming for, and while the counters were maybe a little bit easy, it was still a joy to play. All the moves felt crisp and really seemed to hit well, and there were substantially less glitches than the more recent offerings. Yes, certain things like the last man standing and submission controls were a bit dubious, but other than that, things worked pretty well. The background commentary has always been pretty poor, but where this has particularly stood out is in the women's matches, where some of the comments made are quite frankly dated and unnecessary. The intelligence of the AI is up for debate. Sometimes they seem to walk right into your attack, other times they seem to be able to counter with annoying ferocity. I did not want to see that again. But all these positives aside, the selling point of this game was about a man.
Is about a man who became a legend.
A man named Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Welcome to 2K Showcase, a game mode that puts you in the black boots of Stone Cold Steve Austin and allows you to relive all of his highlights from the WWE, along with a few little snippets into his time in ECW and WCW. The bulk of the gameplay in this mode utilises the same controls as the basic exhibition games, however, there are some key differences. Through this game mode, interspersed with live video montages which are put together beautifully, you'll be put in matches that are key to the story of Stone Cold Steve Austin's career. However, the aim isn't simply to have a match and win. The aim is to relive the match that actually happened, and so you'll be given particular objectives. The majority of these are pretty simple, such as taking a certain amount of health off your opponent, applying a particular move, or doing a grapple to set up a cinematic interactive cutscene that then mimics scenes from the actual fight. Usually, you can still move on without hitting all of these objectives, but these objectives are worth hitting. Doing so allows you to unlock up to 40 new characters or versions of existing characters, along with key costume items, most of which are based around Stone Cold Steve Austin himself, and a host of different arenas for you to use in exhibition. Being honest, other entries in the 2K series which had a similar showcase type mode also followed this pattern, but the objectives felt like such a chore, and quite frankly, by the end of it, I felt more like suplexing the television than my opponent. But this one, it was just fun. The objectives were challenging, but not too challenging, and I still managed to enjoy the match. If I was going to be really picky, I'd point to the WrestleMania 14 main event and the omission of Iron Mike Tyson, with him being replaced with a generic The Enforcer character, but given how much it would cost to license Mike Tyson for the game, I can understand why they missed this. What should be huge moments like winning the WWE title is slightly anticlimactic when you already know that's exactly what's going to happen, but for a wrestling fan to gripe about preordained outcomes, that would seem kind of ironic, so we're going to let that slide. So, what are my final thoughts? Well, unsurprisingly from what I've said, I've loved it. This is a game that had just been sat on my shelf for years, and now having played it, I've no interest in playing any of the more recent ones. This has been a joy to play, and I currently plan to use it for WrestleMania for a streaming event rather than any of the more recent ones, because this one plays like a dream. So, rating it, how has this game aged? Well, at the time of release it was getting marks between 8 and 9 out of 10, which is very good. There was a few outliers of 7 out of 10, but that's pretty common with wrestling games. A lot of people just don't like wrestling and feel unable to take that out of it. But even now, I'd say this game warrants an easy 8 out of 10. It's been great fun to play, even the roster doesn't seem that dated, and overall, I've loved it. A big thank you to everyone who's watched. Please feel free to subscribe, like, share and comment, and you can find Saber Duel Gaming on TikTok, Instagram and YouTube.